Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here. So, I had a shamanic training today, and I thought I would just share an outline of it because of time and fatigue on my part. I'm not going to go into like each of the journeys or anything, but I just thought I would share the framework to just show you one person's experience with a shamanic technique. This is called Basic Shamanic Techniques class. And just what it consisted of. All right, so, and this was from 11 o'clock to 5, like 5:20 or something. And although it wasn't originally part of the plan, she did, well, I don't know if it was 10 minutes, 15-minute break in the middle there, so that I could grab something to eat and let my dogs out. And there were many moments of interruption because I've got a UTI infection, bladder infection, and so I was swigging and drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking and having to run to the bathroom and run to the bathroom. But we got through it. I got through it. And so normally, of course, this is COVID time. Maybe it's not, of course, if you're watching this years later. But it was COVID time, and so it was an online experience. And I don't know how many people she normally has, or if she normally waits to have a certain number of people before she does a class. But in this case, it was just she and I, just the instructor and myself. And if anybody wants to look her up, it's Ruth Ann Mack, last name M-A-K, and her website is Alabama Reiki. So I think she was involved, well, I think she kind of was one of those people who was kind of born with abilities. But I think she did Reiki first. Just a minute. Sorry about that. I've got cats, and when they start yowling for no reason, they were just fed. It's distracting to me. So we did it online. We did it through Zoom, just she and I. And so I had the benefit of the full attention of the instructor. And she kind of she doesn't adhere to one particular type of shamanism or avenue of shamanism. But to me, from having read Michael Harner's work, I don't think she strays too far from that. She did also mention Sandra Ingerman, and she mentioned, the various traditions in different parts of the world very briefly. But it starts, it starts with disclaimers, which are similar to what we would do with tarot, which is just saying what the limitations are. Don't think you're going to do this instead of your doctor. When she gives people a certificate, and she says, just because I have provided someone with a certificate doesn't mean that I automatically endorse any actions beyond this class or whatever. So she has those disclaimers. Then she has what I would call like a little syllabus on a page, showing all of the different subjects that will be covered. And then she starts out with sacred space and creating sacred space, and very broad-minded with all of this, always providing some examples, but saying, it's totally up to you how you want to create that space. And then she has a sample. She opens sacred space at that point for the two of us or whoever else is present. And that's when she talks about the different kinds of shamanism. Perspectives on shamanism is the next section. And then indications for shamanic work. In other words, symptoms, or I guess you would call it symptoms, that indicate that shamanic work might be helpful in a given situation. Well, I'm thinking about it, it just came to mind. She told me, and she said this blew her away also. It blows me away too. I think I've mentioned here, that I'm in the middle of a very conservative area. But she got a request, I don't know when this was, I think it was many years ago, to go to Birmingham, which is, I'm in the rural area. Birmingham is a big city with more big city open-mindedness. Still very religious, etc., but there's more open-mindedness there. But she said she was very surprised when she got a call asking her to come down and do power animals retrievals. Or no, maybe it wasn't. Spirit guide, I think she said. Spirit guides, to provide spirit guides for everyone. She said it was health related. It was actually like an AIDS group or something. And that is pretty mind-blowing in this area. But anyway, onward. I just mentioned that because it came to mind, and it amazes me. The shamanic trance is the next section, where she talks about drumming and rattles, and she talked about modifications to these things. I really like, she said, now I have a rattle, which I've already put away for today, but a gourd rattle. But she was saying you could even just get there's little, well, she could say like in gumball machines, there's these little plastic eggs that have the little prize in them. Or sometimes you have eggs like that you would have in an Easter basket, and you would open it up. She said if you get one of those and just put something in it, she was suggesting shards of rose quartz, I think, and you could just use that for, in other words, something that's really easy on your body. And I still like that, because my gourd rattle has kind of a long handle, and it's got feathers on it, which sounds great. It looks great, but the feathers are flying around while you're trying to shake it. So I appreciated some of her suggestions, and I did tell her that I have issues with the drumming. I find really annoying. For the purposes of this, Zoom meeting, she sent me a link to online drum music. There's quite a bit online shamanic drum on YouTube. So she sent me a link to that, and that's what I used, and it wasn't too bad. Alabama is also the place of the endless allergies. What was I going to say? Drumming, but she was talking about either trying different drum tapes or CDs or whatever, different drumming, or modulating the sound seeing what volume was most tolerable or most stimulating from a shamanic sense. So drumming had in the past really, like I said, annoyed me, and I have never really journeyed with it. I just turned it off. It just bugged the heck out of me. But through all of these journeys that we did today, it was like a journey intensive. It was a bit, I understand why she did it, and it made logical sense, but it was a lot. And of course I experience it that way because I do have the fatigue. Other people might not. And I this time around it didn't bother me. So I don't know if I'd had it turned up too loud previously, or maybe it was actually more bothersome when I was new and it's less bothersome now. But I don't feel like I had like a more intense experience, and that's what I was wondering, is if it would take me into a deeper state. But at the same time, again, because of time constraints, etc., and these primarily being exercises, I don't think I went a full 10 minutes on any of them. So they were relatively brief journeys. So I don't know if listening to the beats for more like 15 or 30 minutes would have a different effect. But anyway, so she talks about that. She, does the debunking, like it's not necessary for you to, use any kind of mind-altering substance or anything like that. So one of the things that I really got out of this is, I think I was just lazy. I wasn't very disciplined about these things. So it's, one of the things, she has 3 major guidelines. One is to journey with a purpose. So even if the purpose is, to commune with your guides or your spirits, but to have a purpose, and never to journey without your guides. So make sure that you're connected to your guides, or that you're meeting your guides, and come back to where you started. So one of the things I had gotten lazy about was, in shamanic journeying, technically, when you're going to the lower world, which the majority of the time you are going to the lower world, it's usually accessed through like something that at least resembles a hole in the ground, or is a way to get into the ground. And I kind of dispensed with that and would just connect to a guide, just connect to something that I was close to for a long time. It was Dolphin, so I would just say, Dolphin, Dolphin would be there, take me away. And so it's like shamanic joyrides or something. Wasn't always that. Dolphin took me on some intense experiences, but yeah, it was a little, and so I would skip that part, that access point, that access part of the journey. I would skip, and the next part is come back where you started when you were finished. And that I completely dispensed with. So it's like I didn't have a clear beginning and ending to I did, in the sense that I would let it fade out or end or something, but I didn't have that entry and that specific exit. that you go back to specifically. So, and I see now how that is probably important for safety. Let's just put it that way. Important for safety. Which isn't to say that your guides aren't always with you. But that's why I say that, it's like the journey to the lower world, or being in that, I think is safer than connecting with them in this world, the middle world. And she talked a little bit about that there's a lot of stuff, you might say unhinged stuff. There's a lot of energy floating around here. You might say it's less pure. So anyway, so when you're journeying to get clear answers or solutions or something, this is not the place to be walking. So yeah, journey with a purpose. Never journey without your guides, and then come back where you started when you're finished. The next is working with guides and journaling, and she's just talking here about recording, talking about the different kinds of guides, like it's spirit guides, and writing it down and building a relationship with them. Excuse me. And she also tells you, kind of what not to expect, or what you wouldn't expect. Says, for example, one of her last sentences, usually they come in a form that won't horrify or frighten us. They may be unusual but not terrifying. So just being clear about that. And journaling, again, is just about the utility of recording, even if it's just jotting a few things that could trigger a memory later in some way, doing that. And I told her that is something that I had started with, but it had abandoned because of the amount of time. When I sit down and start writing and I start recording the entire experience, I could spend half a day doing that on a really short journey because so much happens during them. But again, she still recommended jotting something down, something to remember. So then there's a section, consideration for working with guides, and again, she says your guides will not be, they will not denigrate you, will not be aggressive, etc. But they can, of course, be a little snarky or humorous or ridiculous, or on occasion playfully make fun of you. So she just gives some perspective on that. She talks about something called the healing story, and I don't think I'd ever heard that expressed. I can't remember that was in a Harner book, or that I'd heard that, so I'm not sure where she got it. But it's essentially kind of the do no harm idea. To, like, in a sense, if you see something, if you're maybe doing a soul retrieval, and you were to see a violent situation that you maybe wouldn't be terribly explicit about it, so as not to re-traumatize a person, but rather to couch it in more general terms. So I'm not doing soul retrieval, so I'm not in a position to worry about that. But in general, she this healing story was something that I hadn't thought about, and so it helped trigger like the problem I've had communicating with guides or thinking about asking questions. So I jotted quite a bit about, the very basic questions that I'm not asking, very basic questions that she suggested. But, one of them is a really basic why. Like if a power animal is supposed to be for somebody, to ask why, and then you bring that why back to the person. I think it makes a lot of sense. It would help them connect to the power animal, and I think that that's not something. When I was, well, the second time that I had a shamanic treatment, I was asking specifically for a power animal or guide that would help me with boundaries and protection. But the first time I was interested in a power animal, I'm not sure that I had a why, or if even I was asking for that to be done. Oh, excuse me. But the person who was doing the treatment for me, I think she suggested, and who wouldn't want to have a power animal retrieved for them. But I don't think it was awkward connecting with the power animal because I didn't know what I was supposed to do with it. What am I supposed to do with this? How connect with it? And I think if there had been some sort of a why, or how the power animal was going to be a helper or an advocate, that it might have helped with the connecting. We still ended up having a very happy connection, and that power animal is still with me today, although at times it has faded. Yeah. So there's this idea of kind of not only bringing back a soul part or bringing back an animal, but bringing back, I don't know, like some sort of grounding message. Some sort of grounding message. See, it's not even perfectly clear to me. Even though I did it, as I was working today, even though I was doing it mainly for me. One of the great things about this series of journeys for me was, again, that she was good about saying, and ask your guide X. So I was still wasn't perfect at it, but was starting to, instead of just being passively, mildly confused, like, well, I wonder why that is. I would actually be more directive and say, tell me what's going on here. Tell me more about this. Why? So that was helpful. So she has a section where she talks about how to bring a message back, in a sense, and how to couch that message so as to be compassionate. And then there's just the journeys. All right, so journey 1 was just a visit to the lower world, just to go down there and scope it out. And I think in Harner's book that's his first journey for people. Just to go look around, just to do that journey thing, go down the tunnel or down into the roots or whatever it is you're going to do to access that other world, and then get out there and take a look. So it's kind of a safety thing. You go down and you see that it's not super weird. Well, maybe for you it is super weird because you like super weird stuff, but it's not something that that feels out of place or anything like that. And then journey number 2 was to go down and meet my primary animal guide. See, all of this yawning. That's what you get to miss out on when I don't have the camera directly on me and instead down at the cards. So again, a journey to the lower world. These are 2 journeys to the lower world. Okay, so and then she has journey 3. And I don't know if this is her thing or where she got this. I don't think I've ever heard of this before. But it's a journey to go meet the Council of Animals. And I'm like, what is, I don't, and I'm still not clear on kind of why somebody would go down there. Maybe if you wanted to gain collective knowledge for some reason, but there it is. So go down and meet with the Council of Animals. And journey 4 was me bringing, so I'm sure in a larger workshop I would be doing this with another person in the workshop, but since it was just me and the instructor, I went ahead and retrieved a power animal for her. And she kind of described how she saw the ceremony aspect from her perspective. Like blowing the power animal into the crown. I think it's the crown and the heart chakras at the end. And the importance of requesting if it's okay to have permission to do that. And also the importance of not telling a person beforehand what their power animal is, so that they don't automatically reject it as something they don't want. So they have to be fully on board and willing to accept. And so you ask for, in hers, it's like you go on the journey, you come back, and you ask the person if they will accept the power animal. And it's not until after you blow it into the chakras that you tell them what the animal is. Journey 5 was a journey in the middle world, which is our temporal world, the one that we inhabit, the one that I'm filming right now. And she did hide an object. I would call it a game exercise with me, where she hid an object, and then I again met with my guide, and but I didn't do the down into the lower world. Okay, so that was something that wasn't done. So there isn't that transitional phase where you're going through a tunnel or anything. But was just to ask the help of my guide in finding the object, or giving some clue. Really, it wasn't really finding the object, giving a clue as to where the object was hidden. And I was surprised that I was successful at that. But both this exercise and, well, even the Council of Animals, but less so for that, but also getting an animal guide for her, really helped me see that, like, it's not me that gets the animal guide. I'm just along for the ride, really. So, that what I'm doing is I'm asking that animal guide, that power animal, to do this thing for somebody else. So I'm either doing it, so it's like there's an approval process, and I'm just along out of curiosity in some ways. So when I'm going down to seek an animal guide for her, it's not me that is choosing, and it's not me they're coming up to. It's that my animal guide is going through, having been asked to find something for this other person. And there was one type of animal that came forward and was like, and my guide just walked on by. Nope, it's not you. So so that was, and same thing with this, finding the lost object. I didn't do it. I didn't like psychically come up with a clue. I essentially asked my animal guide. And I did not expect to be successful at this. It was just like, I'm not even going to worry about this. We're going to go through the motions, and it'll be over, because there's other things to do. I'm not going to sweat this because I have no expectation of being successful. And so it's like, all right, guide, show me where it is. Give me a clue. It isn't really showing you where it is. It's just give me a clue where this thing is. And it's like, bam. And I'm sure that if it was just me, like, God, where is this thing, that it wouldn't have happened like that. And it was actually, when I say bam, it was actually, I saw the paw of the animal go right to that thing. And it's like, that, right there. And so all I had to do was look and say, all right, well, that's the clue. I'm going back. I'm going to tell her the clue. That's enough. That physical characteristic, that's all I'm willing to do. And it turned out to be correct. And we just talked. She had journey 6, and I think time was where it's kind of running out, and so we didn't do a separate question, but it's what she calls divination, and it has to do with the middle world. It has to do with the physical world. And since I assume I'm talking to a bunch of tarot readers, etc., people who are familiar with divination, it doesn't have to have anything to do with the future. It can be the present. So yeah. She considers like that, where are the car keys, that kind of a thing, is to her is also a form of divination. Anything where you're asking your guides to answer something that has to do with this world in particular is divination. Journey 7, there's just 2 more. Journey 7 was a journey to the upper world, and we pretty much, and this kind of reiterates the lower world, where the first journey was just to go there and look around, and we actually skipped this one because, as she said, I think you've probably done this already, and I said yes, I have been there. I never went very far there, but I've been there, and so I knew my way of accessing it. So we kind of skipped that, and then we did Journey 8, which is to connect with a guide in the upper world, which I have never done. I came close once, that there was one that came down to help with some chakra type work, but it was all very billowy. It's all very billowy and ill-defined, but there was a sense of an actual specific being sort of being involved. So so we did this, and this in fact was not, this one was a little strange to me. The others were not too shocking. They're always interesting, right? They're always interesting. But so I had one guide, I had my animal guide taking me to seek this upper world guide. And the upper world guide was asleep, and so not kind of in stasis. So that was, unfortunately, I needed to go get some antibiotics for my bladder infection. So, or UTI, whatever I've got going on there. So it was a little bit rushed at the end, but I just didn't feel, she had offered if maybe we could cut it off and just continue the next day, but it's like, no, while we're here, let's finish it. And I really felt that I was not going to get an answer about that sleeping upper world guide during that particular session. Perhaps just from being tired, at that point. So that is something I will return to ask why or what's going on there. Yeah. So I've got a lot of jotting to do tonight and I have done some jotting, just her notes about the things that she provided that I thought would be really helpful to me, and recording the journeys, the experience of the journeys, even if it's in very brief terms. So those are the journeys, and then she ends with a section about ethics in shamanic journeying. In particular, checking in with yourself about whether you have permission to do something for another person, whether you can do it, whether, in other words, whether you have training, and that's for whether or not you're doing it for yourself or for others, and then whether or not you are the best person, even if you can do it, if there are any circumstances like you maybe are too close to the person, or even have ill will toward a person for whatever reason. Are you the best person, or should you find somebody else to do the work? And other things like, don't journey while you're under the influence of substances, etc. So yeah, that's the scope of it. Essentially, that's the scope of it. So I think, part of the reason I did this now was because I was told, given a shamanic experience that I had, that I really needed to get some training and to learn some protection, particularly. And I have Caitlin Matthews' Psychic Shield that I'm reading these days. But I'm understanding better from having had this experience. I'm sure that there's more to be learned in terms of protection, because of course this is just a very broad introduction. I would think this actually would be fairly overwhelming for somebody if it was somebody's first time doing any kind of journeying. That's not my case. I struck out on my own to do, just kind of did it myself there for a while. And I think that's the end of that. I am tired, but I did want to record this while I had her worksheets up, that she had provided, and yeah, just give people a window into what a basic first level introductory shamanic techniques class, what it looks like in one instance, because everybody is different, all teachers are different, and there are different traditions, etc. But there you go. take it easy. I hope this is useful for you, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.